pleased to announce our next speaker, who will be wrapping up the afternoon here for us. And it's a great honor to have with us Jon Kiper. Jon Kiper is running for Governor of New Hampshire. I will let Jon introduce himself a little bit more personally, but Jon grew up in New Hampshire, and after some studies away and I believe abroad, came back to New Hampshire, is served locally on various boards, commissions, and town council, where he resides now. I know as a father and a husband, and is currently running with a party of his own making, which is something that we can all relate to. And it has also had some I know, experiences working within major parties as well. So much to unpack here. We're very lucky to have this caliber in the room with us to talk about a real election that's happening right now in 2026. So please give it up for Jon Kiper.
Thank you so much, folks, for having me here. Really appreciate it. I've never been a keynote speaker, so that's kind of fun. Something great to put on the resume after the campaign. So yes, I've lived in New Hampshire basically my whole life. I've spent the last 10 years running a little restaurant in my town, and I lived there with my partner and my 10-year-old son. So basically, I started running in 2023. I've been really frustrated with the way that my state was running, in the sense that we didn't have any more money for parking in my town. And I got on the town council, I'd done everything I could to get more parking, but I realized we didn't have the money for parking because most of our funds were going to fund the school. In New Hampshire, 70% of the budget for the local school comes from local property taxes. I don't think Massachusetts is quite as bad. I think New Hampshire is the worst in the country for that. Which means that if your town is property poor, you're paying more money per your income. So we really didn't have money for more parking. My business couldn't really expand. I was seeing my employees get priced out of the town. I was seeing my customers just leave New England completely. They just got so frustrated with the housing situation. And in 2023, the governor at the time, Sununu, said he wasn't going to run again. And I knew, because I looked this up years before, that I was eligible to be governor. Meaning I was 30 years old, I've been a member of a resident for 7 years, and I was a registered voter. And I saw this, and I always kind of tickled me, the back of my brain, like, maybe I'll run for governor, I can do it, And another thing you should understand is the state reps in New Hampshire do not get paid. So the obvious thing after being on the town council and running into this issue with parking would be to run for a state rep. But I could not do that. Economically, driving to the Capitol 3 or 4 days a week for no money was just not going to happen. And so I've been thinking about running for governor, and you know what, whether or not I was that serious, I don't know, I just had it in the back of my head. And Sununu said he wasn't running, and then the first candidate to put their name in the hat in the ring was someone named Cindy Wormington. And the very first thing I read about this woman was that she had been a lobbyist for Purdue Pharma, maker of OxyContin, the company that basically created the heroin epidemic in New Hampshire and New England and this entire country. And let me just say, this was a Democrat, okay? And I looked at this and I was like, this is insane. This is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. There's no way that this woman is going to get elected. Like, these people must be morons. And I hate to say it, but they are. And at the same time, I had a friend who I'd known since I was 5 years old. We lost touch in the last decade, but he ended up in prison because of his part in the opioid crisis. He had got addicted to heroin, sold some heroin, and was doing a very long prison sentence. And around the same time that Cindy Wormington announced she was running for governor, he called me from a prison, or actually a jail in New Hampshire. And he sort of stuck in limbo because it was COVID. And he was there to testify against someone that he had worked for. Now, he wasn't going to testify against this person. He was going to plead the fifth. He told me that. He said, I can't testify against this guy. They'll kill me. But he had to wait in this jail anyway. And the court case kept getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. And he said to me, it's not that bad. Like, I'm getting by. But he said, Kiper, I haven't seen the sun in 3 years. And I said, really? Like, are you being, are you just saying that? He said, no, man, I haven't been outside in 3 years. And I hung up the phone. I kind of thought about that for a while. I was like, he can't really be serious. So I called Stratford Correctional Facility. I said, do the inmates go outside? The woman on the phone said, no, this is a jail. They don't go outside. So he wasn't lying. So at the same time as my friend is in prison, hadn't seen the sun in 3 years, this woman is going to run for governor. And I just, I spent several nights just thinking about this and thinking about it, and I was like, man, this is not right. But surely she's going to drop out. Any day now, she's going to drop out. And then a little while later, another woman decided that she was going to run as well. Her name was Joyce Craig. She had been the mayor of Manchester. And at first I thought, oh, that seems like a good idea, mayor of Manchester. And I thought about it a little bit more, and I thought, Manchester's kind of like the capital of New Hampshire for crime and poverty and homelessness. Like, this seems like it's going to be an issue. And when she was mayor, she had forced some homeless encampments out of the city, which I always just thought didn't make a lot of sense. You're moving homeless people from one place to just go hide in another place. It's not really solving the problem. So there had been a lot of pushback from some of the progressives against her time as mayor. And so I'm thinking about these two people, I'm like, this seems like probably two of the worst candidates that you could come up with if you were trying to win an election. And so I said, well, let's see what they're doing on housing. Because I've been living in my 740 square foot apartment for, at that point, 7 or so years. I kept looking for a house, and there was nothing available. It just seemed the prices go up and up and up. And I looked, and none of the candidates, the Republicans nor the Democrats, had anything on their website or anything on their platform about housing at all. They mentioned abortion a little bit, but that was basically it for the Democrats. The Republicans didn't even really mention any issues at all. It was basically just give me money. And I thought, this is crazy. We've got one candidate that's an opioid advocate, another one that was basically pushing homeless people around, and no one's got a plan for housing. This is insane. So I said, screw it, I'm going to run. And if you didn't know, it's only, at least in New Hampshire, it's only $150 to get on the ballot. So there's really not a huge bar if you're willing to do that and willing to say out loud, I'm running for governor. That part is hard, frankly. And at first I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to probably just make some TikTok videos, see how far I go. If it takes off, it takes off. And if not, what have I lost, really? And I got lucky. I ran into someone that had been a state rep for about a decade and had worked for Run for Something for quite a bit of time. And we got lucky. I got lucky because she got laid off from Run for Something with a little bit of severance, just enough that she could help me get my campaign started while we started, fundraising to pay her. And she connected me with the network. And basically, if you've never run a statewide campaign, which I'm guessing most of you have not, the way it works is if you're a Democrat, you go to Democrat town and county meetings. And you go to barbecues and fundraisers, and once you know who to talk to, you just get on the speaker list. And it's kind of a funny thing, because there I was, never having done much besides sit or speak to an empty room at a town council meeting. And I was at the Shaheen McIntyre dinner giving a speech with Maggie Hassan and Gene Shaheen and Chris Pappas, and the governor of Minnesota, Walz, was there. He was the keynote speaker. So I was kind of like, wow, this is crazy. What am I doing? And it was really funny because that first speech, I said, look, this is what we got to do to win. We got to win independent voters. We got to talk to young people. We got to talk about housing. We got to talk about environment. Suing ExxonMobil to hold them accountable for global warming and these sort of things. But we've got to have good ideas. And literally every other person that got up on that stage, just all they said, I swear to God, was Republicans bad, Orange Man bad, Ayotte bad, Sununu bad. And this guy came up to me after and he's like, man, you're the only one that actually talked about a strategy to win voters. And I'm like, and he literally goes, he was like, it's madness to repeat the same thing thinking you're going to get a different result. And yet here we are, and these people, nothing has changed. And so it was pretty funny because I kept going on and going to these forums and stuff, and I started noticing suddenly the other two were talking more about housing and the environment and these other issues that I've been pushing. All of a sudden, I said I was going to sue ExxonMobil. They come up with a plan for e-cars and electric charging stations. And the pinnacle was at one of the forums, sitting there, a question comes in about housing, and Cindy Warmington goes first, and she says this line, she goes, yeah, one of the things I'd do is I'd have this plan to educate planning and zoning boards across the state about why we need affordable housing. And I'm sitting there, this is a line on my website. It's like one of the top or third bullet points for housing. It's like educate planning and zoning boards. And it's a great line because one, it's free. It doesn't cost any money. There's no taxpayer money involved. And number two, who knows if it will work? Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. But it was a good line. And so it was so funny because she took it and I was sitting there and I'm going, I was happy on one side, so this is what I came here to do, but on the other side, it was a little bit infuriating, to be honest with you. But so I go through the whole thing, you know, and we were kind of counting on the fact that 50,000 young people that almost never vote in a primary were going to show up, you know. And because it's a low bar, 60,000 votes is what would win it in the three-way race. And the primary came, and oh, actually, sorry, I forgot one very crucial part. The whole time, I knew that I needed to get onto the debate stage for WMUR. Right, WMUR is the only national TV, or not statewide TV channel in New Hampshire. And I was like, if we don't get on there, we're screwed. This is not happening. I'll have maybe minimal impact. We'll probably get 1 or 2% in the vote, maybe 3%. In WMUR, the way it works is they'll send you the rules, and every time they change the rules, and they'll say, this is the qualifications to be in the debate. Now, I, at that point, had become somewhat friends with Adam Sexton, who was our main journalist for this type of thing, and so I felt like he was kind of helping me out with the way the rules were written, because it applied to me, and it seemed like it was feasible. The only one thing is that I had to be at 3% in the polls, and at that point, no polls had come out. And there was a deadline, and it was like, whatever, maybe a month before the debates. And poll comes out 2 days before, and I'm at like 2.5%. And I was just gutted. I was at this event, I get this text message from my campaign manager, and I'm like, what did we just do? What have we been doing for 9 months? Like, this is, like, what a complete waste of time. I'm an idiot to think that we could do any of this. Like, I'm so pissed. We're not going to WMR. Like, and we had events planned that weekend, and I was like, I can't even go. I don't know how I can stand in front of these people and try to pretend like this is happening. And she was like, well, you know, whatever. And she was really upset too, you know, feeling she failed me. And 3 days later, we're talking, and she texts me, and she goes, hey, somebody just sent me a poll. We sent it to you. And I was at 8%, and another poll had come out. And I said, well, why don't we email WMUR and see what they said? And she's like, dude, they're never gonna let you in. Like, I'm sure it's an FEC law, like, they can't just, like, change the rules. I'm like, get her to send an email. So I send the email, and like 2 days later, we get the invite to the WMUR debate. And it was so funny because, I don't know, I'd never been on live TV debating with two people that were very serious and fairly, you know, educated. You know, Cindy Worm's been a lobbyist and a lawyer for 20 years. She's used to standing in front of a microphone. Joyce Craig has been mayor of Manchester for 8 years. Like, she's used to this stuff. I really didn't know what I was doing. And it was so funny because I get on that stage, and the two of them had been sending negative ads against each other. Luckily, I didn't have the money to even partake, but it actually was good for me because all you would see on TV is Cindy attacking Joyce for basically saying Manchester was a shithole, and Joyce attacking Cindy for being a lobbyist for Purdue Pharma, and they both just kind of looked terrible. So we get on the debate stage, and they just started basically bickering, right, about their husband jobs, and what, a heroin epidemic, and whose fault is homelessness in Manchester. And I just kind of sat there, and like in hindsight, I just looked like this little small business angel on the stage, you know. And it was so funny because we had a couple endings that I'd worked out, and I wasn't sure which one I was going to go with, but we had the closing 15 seconds, and I said, Cindy Wormington is going to lose because of her connections to opioids in Purdue Pharma. Joyce Craig will lose because of homelessness in Manchester. Those are facts. You can do without what you will. And it was so funny because the Democrats were so pissed because the last thing they want to hear ever is the truth. And when Joe Biden had been in that debate and been terrible, I said, hey, this guy's got to go. And they were so angry with me for that. I said, I don't know what to do with you guys, because I'm kind of a logical, reasonable person, and when I see an old man on stage, I'm just going to call it out, and you guys are sort of in a state of denial, really. And so they were pretty pissed at me about that, but whatever. And then Joyce Craig obviously went on to lose by about 9.5 points. And the Democrats were particularly mad at me, or I think a little bit mad at me and Cindy, because Kelly who won, she ended up using this clip of us in the debate stage trashing Joyce in one of her ads. So you turn on the TV to see me and the other one, you know, and literally it was like the leading Democrats in the state of New Hampshire trashing the current governor candidate. And I was like, oh, they're not going to like that at all. So the election day came, and we did not win. I will say that clearly. I'm here, and I'm not the governor. But what I did succeed at is, one, we got them talking about housing, which was crucial. And two, I got about 9.5% of the vote, a little bit under 10. And many of the people that voted for me said that they would have voted for Cindy had I not been in the race. She ended up losing by about 6 points. So I can pretty confidently say I prevented her from being the general election candidate. I think she would have won either way, but or would have lost either way. But it just the point is that you should get involved in politics, and you should do it. I spent $60,000. 40 of that went to my campaign manager, so we only spent 20 grand on signs lit, Meta, we did some advertising there, Hulu ads. But I was able to make a difference, and I was able to push the campaigns in a way that they would not have been able to otherwise. And Joyce Gregg even said that after. She said, look, Kiper pushed us towards housing, he pushed us towards talking about cannabis, and I gave them, frankly, talking points. Another funny thing is, they started copying our social media too, because theirs was just garbage, and my campaign manager was really good. So it was just, we were sort of giving them an unpaid lesson in how to run sort of modern, no money campaign based on social media. But I was pretty happy with the way that things went. Obviously I didn't win, but with the limited money we spent. So when 2026 was coming up, I was like, you know what, I really want to run again. We did pretty well. We didn't spend a lot of money. I think we can do this. Initially, I was going to run as an independent because I just did not really want to work with the Democrats. And then the funniest thing happened where I was talking to groups like Forward Party and some of the donors, and they kept saying, well, who are the Democrats have? Who's running? Who are you running against? I'm like, they don't have a candidate. They can't find a candidate because everyone knows this is they're going to lose. It's very hard to beat a first-term incumbent governor in New Hampshire. And this went on for several months, and the Democrats couldn't find a candidate. Finally, I said, all right, screw it. I'll just run as a Democrat. If they can't find a candidate, whatever. At least, as a Democrat, I can potentially morph them into the party that I want them to be. You know, my campaign manager kept saying, look, if you're the candidate, you can tell them what the agenda is. You know, they don't tell you. You're the top of the ticket. And you know, we held out hope that no one would run. And then, this was just in February, there was an ICE facility that was proposed in Merrimack, New Hampshire. I don't know if you guys heard about this. And everyone was protesting, and everyone was going pretty crazy about it. And then, you know, who announces that she's running for governor but Cindy Warrington? Back! You know, she's back. And then the funniest part was, so she announces she's running, and she's just ready to go on this ICE facility, right? And like 2 or 3 days later, maybe a week later, Kelly meets with Department of Homeland Security, gets the ICE facility closed down or you know, stopped for the time being. And Cindy all of a sudden is just like, that was my whole campaign. That was everything I had, you know? And so it's been really funny because after that I was like, dude, she put $1 million of her own money into this campaign while simultaneously getting up on a microphone and saying, no one in New Hampshire has more money to pay more taxes, you know? And what it came down to is the Democrats in New Hampshire are frankly a center-right party. They don't want to support any new revenue. She is not in favor of any new revenue. And our state has a massive revenue problem, you know? Especially it's getting worse with the federal government cutting everything. And so I got to this point where I was like, these people I'm not even in the same political world as them, you know? And I would talk to people and they'd say, it was really funny. They're like, I really like what you're saying. I'm like, oh, you're a Democrat. And I'm like, well, I vote with the Democrats, but I'm really like a Bernie guy, you know? And I've had that conversation with so many people. And they're like, well, I vote with the Democrats because, you know, but Bernie. And so I came to this point where I was like, all right, I do not want to lose this woman again. And I spent the entire primary explaining to you morons why lobbyists for Green Farm is never going to get elected. And straight out the gate, she had like 20, you know, endorsements or whatever. And so I said, you know, we need a new party. And while I had been building up the second campaign, I took all the research that I'd done and I put it into a little book called Community First Economics. And the premise of the book is basically the opposite of trickle-down economics, where, you know, they cut taxes for rich people, corporations. Community First Economics is we put money into the local community. And I read the book, and because my spiel got too long for a 20-minute, you know, Democrat meeting, so I was like, hey, I need somewhere to put all this information. And also I needed a way to raise more money, potentially. And so I had the book, and it was kind of funny because we were kicking around ideas for a new political party. And I tried to run as an independent, but people kept saying, are you a libertarian? Like, what does that mean? So I said, all right, we need a name for the political party, and we need to have like some cohesive idea. And so we came up with the idea, and it's community first party, and it's pretty simple. It's just the idea that we're going to put our community first. And I've even been trying to pitch it as a bipartisan community, or bipartisan political party. Because frankly, we're not here to argue about social issues, we're here to just get economic things done for average people in their community. And I mean, the way that we worked on the town council is like, I worked with Republicans on stuff like, funding radios for the fire department. We never argued about what Trump was doing, it didn't matter. And in my local community, I've worked with a guy, big MAGA guy, and we've cooked together at the local community church for poor people. And sometimes immigration will come up and he'll say kind of a weird thing, I just am like, whatever, that's not what we're there for. We're there to build up the community. And I think if we could get our political parties to be focused on community, then we would all win. And we could bring down some of the left and right rhetoric that frankly the party heads thrive off of. They want us to hate each other in a world where frankly, most of the average Democrats and the average Republicans want the same things. We might differ in the details of how we get them done, but a lot of people don't really care, They just want their lives to be better. And that's what I think so much of our politics right now is not bringing to people. And it's why we wanted to address this and to tackle it from a new perspective. I'm not gonna lie, it's been really hard. We have to get 3,000 signatures, and they have to be what they call wet signatures, so it has to be in person pretty much. And it's been difficult. We'll see how far it goes, if we can get it or not. We've got till August. We got some time. We've got a lot of volunteers, but this is something that we probably are going to be at for quite a while. I'll just wrap up really quick by saying, I think it's pretty clear to everybody that the U.S. empire is in decline. It is dying. This war in Iran, I think, is speeding that up by about a decade, if not more. So I think it's most likely that the New England area will become an autonomous region with or without a vote. With or without anyone deciding that it's happening. I think we're going to wake up one day in a decade or so, and we're going to look around and we're going to go, we're basically on our own. I think that what Doge and Trump and Musk did by gutting the federal government, it showed us that anyone can toss the Department of Education out, they can toss SNAP out, they can toss out housing for veterans, they can toss out money for homelessness, they can toss out whatever they want. And if that's the case, we got to take care of our own. We got to take care of ourselves. And we've got to start asking the voters, what about the money we're sending to D.C.? We have these debates in my state where it's like, the state's not giving us enough money for the schools. And I was like, what about the federal government? What about the federal government? The most important thing I learned in this book, I think, is that in every other industrialized country in the world, the central government pays for 50, 70% of the public school system. In New Hampshire, it's 10. It's probably about the same here, 10%. So all these bombs going to Iran, all these things going overseas, all this money going to other countries, while we can't even afford schools. And one of the reasons I left the Democratic Party, frankly, was this was March 8th. Our representative, Chris Pappas, was at an APEC fundraiser, and he said, I support the war in Iran, I support Israel's right to defend itself, blah, blah, blah. This war is costing us billions of dollars a day. At the same time, we're having town meetings all over the state where people are talking about laying off teachers, getting rid of sports programs. The schools can't literally afford to bus the football kids to the games, so the parents are driving them. And I'm like, this is madness, and this will not continue. And it doesn't matter what you do at this point to change it. The historical record is very clear. It happened in Rome, it happened in France, it's happened a number of times. You get about 250 years. We're right on target. And I think it's really important what we're doing, because psychologically, I think the transformation from being an empire to being an empire in decline is going to be very painful for a lot of people. And I don't think that many of them have any idea what it's like to not be the reserve currency. I don't think they have any idea what it's like to have a government that does not have the money to bail you out. And that's where we're at. You look at the debt, you look at the middle class being eroded, you look at the foreign ventures in other countries, and it's just textbook historical empire decline. And that's really why I'm here, because I think that people like us are going to have the vision to think about what comes in the next 10 or 20 years that the average normie voter is not going to, they're not thinking about this stuff. And even the average politician is so stuck in the left-right game that they can't even open a history book and go, guys, this is not even up for debate in my mind. You can't turn this back. Maybe if they had political will 10 years ago to tackle some of these issues, that they could. But I'll just finish with this. Just because we live in an empire in decline does not mean that New England could not be a region on the rise. We as a we as a group have got everything we need. Maybe we could use a little more agriculture, but we've got water, we've got energy, and if you look at the greater Northeast, our economically, we rival many countries in Europe. Australia is about the same size in terms of population. So I'm hopeful for the future. I think there's going to be some hard times between now and then, and I think that one really important thing is that we're in this transition period. The old system is still there. We have to continue to use it. Get involved in your local political system. Frankly, I think I probably got more done on my town council than any of my state reps have ever gotten done in the 20 years that they've been in the House. So I say go as local as possible. Somebody was talking about housing and getting projects done on your own. I think that's where we got to go. I think waiting for the federal government or the state government to build the housing for homeless it's almost a waste of time. You might as well just get people together and just come up with a plan yourself, and then put your name on it. Imagine if the Democrats took a third of the money they blew in Kamala Harris's run and just built homeless shelters and soup kitchens, said Democrat soup kitchen. At least then they have a lasting legacy as opposed to just, $1.5 trillion in debt. So I know you guys have been here a long time, and I really appreciate the time, and thank you so much. And I'll take questions if anyone's got them.
Yeah, please. Thank you so much. Are there any questions at all for Jon? Please, come on up.
I just have one quick question. So Graham Plattner got Bernie's endorsement. Have you approached Bernie Sanders for his?
Yeah, so this is something that, it was really funny, because when Graham Plattner showed up in the scene and all of a sudden, was getting all this national media and had $1 million in the bank, I looked at the two guys that were working on my campaign who were poli-sci majors, and I was literally like, what the hell is he doing that I'm not? And I was like, do I need to start oyster farming or grow a beard? And he got really lucky because Maine and Senate races get more national attention in the media. I had no idea how this worked, but the media just does not really care about the governor of New Hampshire. It's just not relevant. So, and I don't know exactly what trick he pulled, but his ability to get that national media was really what elevated him to that level, to where even Bernie's paying attention to him. We've reached out to Bernie. It's really hard because there's got to be thousands of people asking Bernie Sanders for an endorsement, and Graham was lucky, frankly. And there's going to be people like him that get through the process for sure. Zora Mondani got through. There's going to be outsiders that can do it, but on the whole, the game is generally rigged.
Any other questions?
So I'm essentially on my town's council. We have a representative town meeting. There's too many of us. Anyway, what are some examples of things you got done in your local community? I'm feeling very stuck in the this is how we do things here.
Yeah, so there's 3 things that I did that I think I was most proud of that are actually still relevant. The first one was, and this actually I started on an energy and environment committee, and I started pushing for town food composting. Mm-hmm. Composting is a really good one because it's 30 to 50% of your trash is food. Municipal waste in New England is really expensive to remove. So it's a win-win, and those are the ones you want to look for as ways that you can say, hey, we're cutting your taxes, but we're also doing something for the environment. I had this grander scheme of the schools having a whole program. They brought it in. It hasn't evolved to that point. It's now just sort of something at the transfer station where you can bring food, but whatever. It's baby steps. You got to take the wins where you can get them. The other one that I pushed for literally like 5 or 6 years was to legalize what they call unattached ADUs or accessory dwelling units. At the time, they were not allowed, and I just thought it was frankly stupid. That took me literally years of just pestering the planning board and getting over a bunch of people who, literally someone from the planning board, the chair said, we sent you guys a letter about changing that 15 years ago, and you never got back to us. And I was like, all those people are gone or dead. I don't know what you're talking about. But they eventually changed that. It took me pushing for it for 3 years, and then they voted on it right after I left. But they changed that law. Sadly, in the 5 years from when I started to when it happened, the cost to build got so expensive that same vice chair said, I went to build a tiny house in my backyard, and it's going to be like $200,000. And I'm like, imagine if we'd done this 5 years ago, before the pandemic. And the last thing is the thing I'm the most proud of, but I owned a little restaurant, and we at the time were not allowed to serve beer on the sidewalk. And it was really funny because I was like, I'm going to run for town council, so we can drink beer on the sidewalk because this pisses me off. And I was also sick of customers being like, can I drink my beer outside? I'm like, no, and I don't really know why. So it was really funny because I actually wrapped that up in like the first 2 months, and because it turned out no one cared, but no one had ever asked. And I think that's a really important lesson, is a lot of times there's these stupid laws in the books that just like, if nobody asks, it's not going to change. So I would say look for low-hanging fruit that, can make enough people happy that it will get through. I will say that almost everything you do, a third is going to be mad about. And it doesn't matter if you're literally like, we want to call it National Cat Day or something. What about dogs? They'll always find a reason, but I find that kind of stuff is really good. Right now, we have an Arts and Tourism Committee that just started doing this cool thing where they have paintings that they put on walls like outside, and they switch them out, which was pretty cheap, I think, to do it, and it like beautifies this one little section of town and just kind of like gets people outside. So I'm really big into that kind of stuff, murals, art outside, just getting people out into the community, and especially a visual thing where people can be like, oh, I voted for someone and then something happened. Because so frequently on a town council, you're voting for just the fire department or the radios and just the things that people don't really ever question.
So talk to me a little bit about your campaign, getting volunteers, getting doing the signature drive, what goes behind that, how do we mount an effective campaign for people running for our party?
Yeah, good question. So the hard part is definitely 100%. It's the money, and even if you don't have a lot of money, you need some money. Or you need a couple of people that are super dedicated and willing to work as if they were getting paid, basically. Right now, I've been super lucky because I have 2 guys who are sort of like work from home people that can do a lot for me. One of them is doing a ton of work, but he's not getting paid. But he's sort of building up a resume for something he wants to do later. So we built our website out. He did all our brochures, our lit. Having someone that can do graphics is crucial because that's a big part. But literally, my last campaign, I really had one person who knew what she was doing, and she was doing almost everything. It was kind of killing her, but I think that's the most important part, is having like at least 2 or 3 committed people. And then the other thing that you just got to remember is if you get 100 people to volunteer, 3 will actually do anything. That's, I'm sure anyone, and I literally looked because somebody was like, it seems like only like 3 or 4 people come to our, or out of this email list come to the meetings, and I was like, well, that's what you get, So collecting emails is crucial, getting those emails out there. But really, the basics is website, a piece of literature, yard signs. Those 3 things. A campaign manager helps, but someone that's willing to say you're a campaign manager, even if you're not paying them, is crucial. Because no one will take you seriously without someone as a campaign manager. Even if you sort of make somebody up, frankly. That looks better than having nobody at all. At one point I was like, I'm just going to put on a wig and be Bruce Brandon and Jon Kiper's campaign manager. Like I didn't have to do that. The other place to always look is poli-sci majors at schools, at colleges, if you live near a college. And there's also high school kids that are usually interested in getting involved. And I will say, I have very little respect for the 2-party system, so I would say abuse it as much as you can. If you want to run as a Democrat or a Republican or an independent, I would just mathematically figure out which way to get elected easiest. You know what I mean? You don't have to tell them all of your plans. There's a group in New Hampshire called the Free State Project that has basically taken over our state. They're libertarians,
But what they did was they just ran as whatever they thought they could win at. And now they're pretty much running the state of New Hampshire. So I look at what they did and I'm like, whatever, just run, just get involved. You know, it doesn't matter as much for lower, town council and stuff. People are generally a little bit less partisan in that respects. But that's kind of one of the things I liked about the community first idea was it was a way to not piss off people and be like, I'm running. You know what I mean? Like, I got a friend who's a stand-up comedian, and he's like, I can't do anything with you because I don't want to piss off half my audience. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to be community first. Is that going to piss anyone off? He's like, I guess not. No one knows what that is. I'm like, exactly, perfect. Any more questions?
Can you tell us the name of your book again, please?
Yes, it's Community First Economics.
Thank you.
And you can actually read it for free on my website, communityfirsteconomics.com. Which my main volunteer, Charles, one day was like, hey, I think we should put it on there for free, and I think I can do it. I'm like, bro, if you want to do it, and whatever, go for it. Thank you, guys.